This is the Cycling Over 60 podcast, Season 4, Episode 5, More Than a Bike Shop. And I'm your host, Tom Butler. I want to ask you to please consider donating to the Cycling Over 60 Tour to Cure team for Giving Tuesday, which is December the 2nd. That is, of course, if you aren't going to ride with us. I sincerely want as many of you as possible to join us on the ride on May 2nd. As I've been saying, it might seem early to be looking at a ride in May, but I've got a lot to prepare for, and I need to know as soon as possible how many riders will join us. And remember, the first 50 riders to qualify for the ride get a free Cycling Over 60 Tour to Cure jersey. It's now been 3 years since I decided to get serious about cycling. My understanding of cycling has changed dramatically over that time. My understanding of my physical condition has been the biggest change of all. As you know, cycling is currently a huge focus of my life. I'm expecting not to learn as many new things next year as I have in the past 3. However, I might be surprised. I kind of hope so. It'd be great to keep expanding my knowledge of cycling and my health and everything associated with it at a high rate. One thing that I feel like I'm starting to really dial in is my workout program. I think I'm onto something now that could be the program for the rest of my life. Distilling down what I've been learning, it results in this. I want to make sure and put in 10 hours a week of serious activity. And as I've noted before, I believe I need to act like an athlete. We are coming up on the Winter Olympics, and we're going to get stories about athletes and their time commitment. For this phase of life, I want to have that kind of commitment to activity and see where it takes me. I didn't start out this journey 3 years ago as someone who had been athletic over like the last 30 years. I know that does describe some of you. I hope my story is inspiring from the perspective of what turnaround can happen if fitness is taken seriously after 55 years old. In my case, after 59 years old. I've come to believe that that can only happen with a really serious focus on being fit. So 10 hours a week and also 6 days a week of activity. In the past 3 months, I've had a lot of demands on my time, and it's been difficult to get in 6 days of activity in a week. But I believe I just simply need to change that. I just simply need to find the ways to create different habits so I'm more consistent. I just had an important experience on Thanksgiving. I find it to be tough to excuse myself after a Thanksgiving meal and go exercise for 30 minutes. And this year, I just didn't do that. And the result was that my blood glucose stayed elevated for about an hour. That feedback from my continuous glucose monitor was a kick in the butt. So I blew it. Now, if I didn't have a blood glucose problem, I should still have done activity. At my age, in my early 60s, it's important no matter what's going on medically that I am active. I believe that I have to fight now for outstanding health in my 80s. And that means that I need to do things like announce to people at the Thanksgiving table that, hey all, I'm going to be gone for the next 30 minutes. So in a month from now, I'll be able to practice this again at the family Christmas. I plan to do better. I've been saying that 2 of the 6 days of activity that I do each week need to be weightlifting. But I don't think I can get 10 hours in a week of some serious cardio work unless I also do something on those lifting days. So I need to figure that out. I need to figure out what riding looks like on days that I do heavy lifting. So that's the framework of a program that, again, I think I can do for life. 10 hours a week, 6 days a week, and 2 of those days do some lifting. Armed with that, I think I'm ready to schedule an appointment and talk everything over with the pros at Physician Coach. And I look forward to sharing those discussions with all of you. I mentioned Cranksgiving last episode, but I want to revisit it. If you go to cranksgiving.org, you'll see what is happening across North America with this unique celebration of the power of cycling. There are a couple things that are making me want to see Cranksgiving 2026 be absolutely massive. First, I think it's very possible that November 2026 could see an abnormally high number of people be food insecure for the holidays. In my mind, there are some really disturbing economic forces that could mean real hardship for a bunch of people. The other factor is that 2026 is likely going to be a year of attack on the bike as a form of transportation. Bike lane grants are being labeled as hostile to cars. The fight to bring some perspective to road infrastructure should be pretty active next November. I think it would be perfect for there to be about 1 million social media images of people on bikes helping to feed their neighbors. So this is my call to have some conversations this holiday season and recruit some family and friends to participate in Cranksgiving next year. In my state, there is a deadline coming to nominate a route as a Washington State Scenic Bikeway. The designation means that the route will get special attention from Washington State Parks. Our Scenic Bikeways program is set in law, and funds are designated for state parks to promote the route and for the placement of signs designating the route as a scenic bikeway. My company is helping to put together the application. If you're curious about it, you can find information on our route at teleomedia.com/crossstatetrailsouth.html. I'll put that in the show notes. The route has been identified over the years by Bob Myrick, president of the Tacoma Washington Bicycle Club. Bob has been a champion for bike infrastructure and earlier this year received a Lifetime Recognition Award acknowledging decades of advocacy. If you go check out the route, I'd be interested in any comments you might have on it. There's a wonderful bike shop in Seattle called Free Range Cycles. I would describe them as practical. Here's how they describe the bikes that they carry. Quote, "When it comes to bikes, we favor a utilitarian approach. We sell bikes that we like to ride, bikes that can carry you through all sorts of terrain and shenanigans. Our bikes will last for decades, look lovely, perform well in the Pacific Northwest's varied terrain, and carry things with ease." End quote. The ethos of Free Range Cycles was set by founder and longtime owner Kathleen Emry. I see Kathleen as a legendary figure, someone who made Free Range Cycles a place that transcends bikes and truly was a light to the community. In today's world, we need a lot more Kathleens. Here's my conversation with her. I'm being joined today by someone I see as a legend. Thank you, Kathleen Emry, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
So you opened Free Range Cycles in the Fremont area in Seattle in 1997, and you operated it for like 20 years. Am I right about that?
Almost 22 years, yes.
Okay. And we're going to get into some of the reasons why I see you as a legend. But first, what do you remember as your earliest meaningful experience on a bike?
I would say that I grew up in Eastern Washington in a small town called Othello. And my most meaningful was just getting a bike, having a bike. I can remember around 7, 8, riding up to go to swimming lessons through a field on a Western Flyer.
Nice. Yeah, and some big fields in Othello.
Yeah.
So were you active as you grew up, pretty much?
Yes, I was very active as a child. I played a lot of team sports, basketball, volleyball, baseball. Yeah. I was always wanting one of my sisters to join me throwing the ball outside. And Othello was a very flat town, so you could ride your bike around town easily.
Before you opened Free Range Cycles, how would you describe your relationship with bikes? Were they transportation? Were they recreation? Were they something else?
I had moved to California after graduating from high school, and primarily bikes were a form of recreation. But when I moved back to Seattle in 1984, I just saw the opportunity to use a bike around town as transportation. And I went to Greg's Green Lake and bought a specialized hard rock to commute on.
And streets were a lot different then. Also, the whole bicycle was different then, I think is right to say. And at some point you got interested in working in a bike shop. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I think it was 1987. I had finished a master's in ministry at Seattle U. Being queer, I decided that I could not work within the Catholic Church. So one day I took my girlfriend's bike to Wright Brothers and noticed they had a repair class. So I took the repair class, and then I was like astounded by how much satisfaction there was in working with my hands. there was always an end point to it. You got to make something better. And so I got a job at Wright Brothers and started collecting tools. Started early on having a dream about owning a bike shop. It took 10 years, and I met another mechanic at Wright Brothers who had the same dream. And so we put it together.
It sounds like you hadn't ever really considered a mechanical career or something like that before that discovery. Is that right?
That's very true.
I think Wright Brothers still exists.
Yes, it does.
And it's today, you kind of can see decades and decades of stuff at Wright Brothers. It must have been a little bit different back then.
It was different, and he was alternative even back then. He was sort of the champion of Campanola and Italian parts. I mean, that's where you went to find any part. And it was a workshop. People could come in, and they still can. They'd buy a membership for $25, lifetime membership, and you could come in and work on your bikes any time the shop was open. And it also had a repair aspect to it. We did repair bikes, but they didn't sell bikes there.
That's an interesting model of having people being able to come in. I'm guessing that that's kind of the first place where you really started becoming a member of the bike community. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say that I was a part of the bike community, but I moved to Vashon Island in 1990. So that sort of limited my ability to be a part of the Seattle bike community, except for during work hours.
Now, you talked about the owner of Wright Brothers, and I'm forgetting his name.
Charles.
Charles. You got mentoring from Charles at Wright Brothers. Was there other training that you did? Were you seeking other places to build your craft?
No, it was there. I learned to build wheels. I mean, we saw everything that came in the door at Wright Brothers. It was such a variety of bikes, especially older bikes, square taper bottom bracket bikes. But those were very common at that time in history.
And then you make this leap to owning your own shop. And I'm really curious about that. It's one of those things that I'm always interested in, is kind of the entrepreneurship behind things. And so you decided to launch out in open free range. What was that decision-making process like?
Kind of gathered a committee of the Mitchell Mead, who opened it with me, and Jim Hoff, and there was another guy, Tom, and we started just meeting and gathering ideas about what it would be like and where we should open a shop, what our budget might be. I happen to have a degree in business. At first, we're looking on Capitol Hill. We didn't want to pay more than $1,000 a month. We couldn't find any place that we liked. Then one day we were just riding our bikes by the current location of Free Range Cycles, and there was a for rent sign on the door. And so we inquired, and it was $750 a month. It was in our budget. And it was a quirky little space, but we thought we could make it work. And so we started off very slowly by paying ourselves $10 an hour. I think we each put in $3,000 in credit card debt. And we started buying used bikes and doing repair. And that very first year, we were successful.
Now, free range is to me, a special name. The first time I heard it, it's like, that sounds like a good place to be. Can you talk a bit about that name?
Sure. My recollection of it is that I wanted a Coyote on a bike, and Mitch said, "Not to Eastern Washington." One day, our friend Jim Hoff came back from PCC with a free range sandwich, and Mitch said, "I've got it." And he was an artist, and so he went home and built the free range chicken with dreadlocks out of a piece of steel, and that became our name. And people always brought us chickens.
That's awesome. Did you have a chicken for bike swap program at all?
No, we did not have any live chickens, no live chickens.
That's awesome.
We have an array of T-shirts through the years of the free range chicken on 20, like 5 years on the road, on a touring bike and on a racing bike. And it was a very fun logo to go with.
I love it. You were successful that first year. It seems like there's always some nervousness about it. Was it a tough year, or how did you find it to be?
I don't remember it being tough. Mitch left after 2.5 years. I bought him out after 2.5 years that he was going to ride his bike around the world. That was a bit tough for me because I was wondering how am I going to do this alone? In the bike industry, you really have to learn to trust because one day you can make $2 and the next day you can make $5,000. So it's like, it's just practicing it, practicing trusting. I think so each year it got easier to believe that it was going to work the next year.
Gotcha. A woman operating a bike shop, that seems to me to be like working in a male dominated industry at that time. Is that a correct assumption?
That is a correct assumption. There were so many people that would tell me that everyone had a dream to have a bike shop, insinuating that it would fail. I don't know. For me, it was not about a head decision. It was more about a heart decision, about trusting that my vision would manifest.
This is one of those things that I see as legendary about you. You see this thing. Again, I think if I put some of the pieces of the story together, you've got in your mind something you're going to do with your life. And then that becomes something that you see as unsustainable, the ministry. And so you then start working with your hands and discover I think passion for it or a connection to it as being really strong. And then you take that and you move into an area where you can apply that and you can benefit from that and you can structure that the way that you want to. It's a brave move, I think, and it's also an inspirational move.
Well, thank you. I found also that there was a lot of ministry in the bike shop.
Hmm. I can see that. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. I'm wondering, if you can kind of encapsulate how you would navigate difficult conversations with people that maybe questioned whether or not you belonged in that space.
I think I've been pretty open and upfront most of my life about just listening to people. Now I'm a spiritual director, so that is something that I probably was all my life, but I'm a spiritual director now. People would tell me what to carry, what I needed to carry in the bike shop. There was a lot of mansplaining to me. I took it with a grain of salt. I mean, I had to do what I needed to do for myself. I wasn't doing something for someone else.
Or because you were trying to do something for your ego. It doesn't sound like that was part of it either.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It was feeding a passion for me.
And again, I think it's a wonderful place to be in. And I think that's an inspiration for other people that you want to pursue that, to be in a place every day that you can be passionate about. I think that's wonderful. So I'm wondering about running a business in Fremont. Can you talk a little bit about Fremont? Do you see it as having this community identity? If so, how did that community identity shape the culture and your customer base?
Well, Fremont changed a lot. When I worked there in the 80s and early 90s, there were a lot of drugs and it was a hub for drug use and unhoused folks. I cultivated my love for the unhoused population early on in that process. We often had marginal people coming in looking for money, and I would find work for them. And people knew that they were welcome there. And to this day, some of my most treasured memories are of the marginalized people that taught me about my own white privilege. I'm actually hoping to write a memoir about that.
I love it. Please, please do. And please let me know about that. I would love to do whatever I can to promote that. What a wonderful thing when you think about having a bike shop. I look at biking as, a tool for anyone to use, to have that kind of be a bit of a community hub for different things, the bike. And then also if you're like you say, kind of ministering to people, I think I see that as wonderful.
There were other bike shops in the Fremont area. Wright Brothers was, of course, just around the corner. And Second Use, I think it was called, or was it Second Bounce, was down the street. And I always thought of that it was not so much competition to have other bike shops in the neighborhood, but that they could feed off of one another. Because biking is so specific to each individual. Some people want it for transportation, other people want it for recreation. Each shop can serve a different person.
You talked about Fremont being different back then. Can you kind of lay out some of that transition that happened in Fremont?
Yeah, I remember that Halloweens in Fremont were very unusual and freaky, lighting lawnmowers on fire and pushing them around. Then it became gentrified, as a lot of places in Seattle. Adobe moved in, Tableau, Google, a lot of tech industry moved into the neighborhood, which was actually quite good for business. In fact, Adobe bought, I think, 6 bikes from me to have their employees use for commuting, as did Children's Hospital. So yeah, the flavor of Fremont changed a lot. There was just new restaurants, and it just became a more hip place to come.
It has a bit of a reputation of being kind of a quirky, artistic place.
Yeah.
Did you experience that? Do you see it as being that way still?
Oh, I still see it as being that way. In fact, I met somebody here recently who said, "Oh, I'm going to Seattle and we're going to stop and see Lennon in Fremont." I said, "We'll stop by Free Range Cycles," because he was a cyclist.
You'll have to explain a little bit about linen for people who are listening that are not from the Seattle area.
I don't know how the Lennon got there, but I know that there's a statue in downtown Fremont of Lennon.
It gets some attention. It's a point of expression, I guess would be a way to say it for different people.
Right. And so, I mean, as does the Rocket and the Troll, and the bike trail is, a block away from Free Range. That was quite an asset also.
Maybe talk a bit about that. When in the late 80s, 90s, what was the mindset around bike infrastructure in Seattle? Was it the same as it would be today, or do you think not so much?
We'll be right back.
I'm taking a moment here to remind you that we're putting together something special for next May, the Tour de Cure Pacific Northwest. It's the signature fundraising ride for the American Diabetes Association. I know it's early, but that's exactly the point. By signing up now, we'll have plenty of time to build excitement and turn this into a great launch party for the summer cycling season. I want to give a special shout out to Convergent Wealth for sponsoring our team jerseys. Thanks to Convergent, Team Cycling Over 60 is going to stand out with custom jerseys and make a powerful statement that vitality means staying active as you age. Head over to tour.diabetes.org/team/CO60 and sign up for the ride. You can find that link in the show notes. And if you're listening from outside the Pacific Northwest, consider this your invitation to come experience some of the most beautiful cycling routes in the country. It's going to be our spring celebration of everything we love about cycling and the enduring joy that it brings to our lives, no matter our age. Let's come together to make this a great event with a purpose.
Oh, I think the bike infrastructure in Seattle has changed dramatically since then. There wasn't really one back then. There weren't greenways. The Burt Gilman was there, but there weren't a lot of streets that had bike paths along them. Biking was thought of as it was kind of marginalized if you rode a bike. It wasn't mainstream as it is today.
I think it's interesting for people that come to Seattle now and see the waterfront without the overpass in the way, the feel is so different.
It is.
And a great place to bike, I think, too. And getting more so. I read something that you specifically wanted to have balance in your life, even with the demands of running a business. Were you able to accomplish that?
Yes, I think I was. Early on, the first year, I remember Mitch saying, "Well, we have to be closed on Mondays because I have yoga in the morning." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." And from there, yeah, it was always a 24/7 business because, the alarm could go off at any time. But I took time off. I trusted my employees to do what they could do while I was gone. I mean, the shop would still be there when I got back. And so it was really important to me to have a balance. And eventually in 2007, I moved into town because the commute was I was committed always to commuting by bike. And the commute from Vashon meant that I was usually gone 12 hours a day. So in 2007, I decided it was time to move back into town.
Again, I applaud you for that focus. And I think that had to go a long way in creating a culture at Free Range.
Yeah, it was sort of mentoring in a way that this is important to me, and how do you want to make cycling important to you? What aspects of it? And Free Range Cycles was primarily, and still is primarily, a commuter shop.
I'm sure you witnessed significant changes in the cycling industry over your time. Can you talk about what transitions stand out most to you?
Well, technology certainly has changed during the time. And as a commuter shop, I think we were sort of known for fixing the older bikes. Speedy Reedy's was down the on the Burt Gilman Trail, and I remember them, riding their bikes up to get us to our shop to get a square taper bottom bracket. In the early days, we didn't stock the other bottom brackets, so we'd have to ride down there and get those. But that was one way it changed. I think in Seattle, the culture just began to grow, with coffee on Fridays, or the bike culture, the campouts. Everything just started to grow with the younger community. And having Zwift Industries in town was really important in making those bike camping trips valuable to the community.
I'd like to see some of that come back. I'm quite new to the bicycle community. I see that as time to get away together, camp together, as a need. I don't know that there's a desire for it with younger people. I think that's a wonderful thing. It'd be wonderful to see it coming back.
Well, I think they have it. Zwift Industries has a camp out, which is not only in Seattle, but as all over the United States. They used to do, before COVID, they would do, folks that had gone on tours present on Capitol Hill. And it was a great opportunity for people to learn about how to map out a journey.
That's awesome.
And I did 3 years in a row, I did what was called the Great Escape from Anacortes to Newport, Idaho. And it was an organized ride with Associated Grocers to raise money. Yeah, it was fabulous. We camped out and they carried all our gear. It was about a 500-mile route.
I tried to do that route last fall, and unfortunately, I had bursitis in my knee flare up. I just couldn't go very far. I made it over Washington Pass, but that's so 2 days I made it, but that was about it. So
It's a great route.
it is a great route, and I think what I would need to do, it'd be wonderful to go with a group. I was going on my own, and then to leave more time. I'll have to check out what Zwift Industries is doing. They call themselves a bicycle bags and adventure culture. I got to get connected more to them, it sounds like. Would you say that the bicycle industry's relationship with women cyclists has evolved over the years?
Yes, I would say that. So every year, Quality Bike Products, which is the big distributor of parts and bikes, distributes Surly and Salsa and also bike parts, would have a event in the winter called Frostbike. And I remember going there one year and they were having an event for women. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go to this. I'd say 80% of the people were flannel shirted, bearded men. And so I thought, wow, great. And so I went to the seminar for women and it was on how you can sell clothing to women. And I was like, oh no, this is not something am going to do. And anyway, I think for them, I made them understand that bikes were generally made to fit men. And one of the things I got Quality to do was to stop cutting their steer tubes so I could put more spacers to effectively shorten the top tube, because generally women have longer legs and shorter torsos. It took some time to get that to happen, but it did finally happen. And I heard someone say that I had grandmothered some things in.
Nice. Do you think that that was a symptom of being so male dominated in as far as executive positions? Do you think they just weren't getting feedback from women? Why would you say that it would take them a long time?
Well, the bike industry is very male oriented. More men ride bikes than women, especially back in those days. And men are more willing to spend money on bikes. So I think it's changing the culture with women too to understand how important it is to have a nice bike because if you have a nice bike, you're more likely to ride it. And if you have a bike that fits, you're more likely to ride it.
At some point, you made a decision to step away from free range cycles. Talk about that. What was that like?
That was interesting. I was in 19 or in 2017, I was turning 64, I think. And I thought to myself, I was wearing down a bit. My body was wearing down a bit. And I thought, I think I'll go on a pilgrimage on my bike in Italy, ride my bike from St. Bernard Pass to Rome on the Via Francigena. And that's going to excite me. I'll come back and I'll be ready to go another 10 years. Well, I came back and I was like, I'm done. It was another intuitive, like, I'm done. And so then it was trying to figure out, the next step on how to what I should do. I really didn't know to do. So I put an advertisement on social media and I got about 5 individuals or groups of people. And Shauna had been a past employee of mine and she was now working at Bikeworks. And she came to congratulate me and take me out for a beer. And when we were having a beer, all of a sudden I looked at her and I said, "Are you interested in buying free range?" And she looked up at me and she said, "I think I am." And I really wanted to hand it to another woman. And she was the only single woman and the most knowledgeable woman that was interested in the shop. And it really felt right. So I made it happen.
And so you're talking about Shauna Williams, who is current owner, and she's in there a lot and a wonderful person. I've met her. You talk about her working at Bikeworks, and I did an episode on Bikeworks, but for people that don't know about Bikeworks, it is a nonprofit organization in Seattle, and they really focus a lot on bike equity or access to bikes and a great organization. And, for me, that's like a great person, a great place to find a person from.
And she had worked at Free Range. That was her first job was in Free Range. And then she moved to Bikeworks. And she had more of a community focus at Bikeworks. She was taking kids on bike trips and she's continued that at Free Range.
That's awesome. I love it. It must not be as unique of a thing for her running a bike shop as it was for you, but I might be wrong about that. Is it still a unique thing to have a woman running a bike shop?
I think it still is a unique thing. I mean, I just don't think there's that many women-owned bike shops, especially, without partnering up with another person. I can't think of another one in Seattle. There are some women-owned bicycle shops in Seattle like Montlake, that's co-owned by women, Carolyn.
Well, I'm so glad Shauna took that on. Good for her. And I'm glad that that continues on in Fremont.
Yeah, I was recently there just about 3 weeks ago. And of course, I stopped and had coffee with her and hung out at the bike shop. And this time I didn't get put to work. Last time I was there, I got a chance to see if I could still build a wheel.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, that would be awesome to walk in and find you working in the bike shop. I'd love
Well,
that.
it was funny because one of my old customers rode by and he looked over and he was like, "Oh my gosh." And he stopped and then another guy came in while I was there that I had outfitted on Surly long haul truckers. He and his wife, they were from the Kitsap County and it was fun to see him also.
Nice. Do you have a feel for independent bike shop management these days? Is it really different from when you started? Is it really difficult? How would you characterize that?
Well, of course, during COVID, it was extremely difficult. The supply and demand, there was just nothing available at the time. I was lucky I actually got out in the summer of 2018. But now she has been worried about the tariffs on bikes, that they could be as much as 40 to 50%.
Mm,
And so really considering, if that happens, bikes will become too expensive for people to buy, and what might be her opportunity in going into the used bike business again. And that is how Free Range started, was in the used bike business.
I'll be interested. I'll have to connect with Shauna here.
I'm sure she could give you some insight into that.
So as you look back at your years, and again, I'm advocating for your memoir, but as you look back over the years of the shop, what are you most proud of accomplishing?
I think I'm most proud of accomplishing uh, the welcoming aspect of Free Range. We welcomed everyone, and that was really important to me. And recently, I met a PT who knew I live in Colorado Springs now, and I met a PT in Seattle that knew of Free Range. And the one thing he said, oh, of course I remember Free Range. It was a very welcoming place, and it was known around town that it was welcoming and that would listen. I think a lot of times in bike shops, there's a lot of mansplaining, and Free Range, I think we tried to hear what people wanted and also do a good job with fitting. So yeah, I'm very proud to have had the shop for 22 years.
You mentioned to me in an email that you're hoping to bike across Italy soon, I think maybe next year, and you'll be 74. I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about that adventure. And then, you mentioned Italy back when you took a break to kind of recharge. Is there something special about biking in Italy to you?
Yes, my grandparents immigrated from Italy to Eastern Washington in the early 1900s. And along with my siblings, we grew up in Othello, a small town in Eastern Washington with 23 cousins.
Wow.
And so my identity has always rooted me in that side of my family. I actually have my Italian passport. My dream is to ride from where my grandparents were born in a small village in the Piedmont region of Italy called Gambasca and Fremont, and to ride to my cousin's pastry shop, which is an hour north of Venice. I thought, what a great reward. I hope she still has it. Italy's always, I'm actually headed to Italy this Saturday to visit a few relatives and then do a little vacation in Cinque Terre.
How fun. That sounds great, really. I've not spent any time cycling in Europe at all. I'm hoping to do that at some point. There's a lot of things that I hope to do, so that's one of them. How has your cycling changed as you've gotten older? If you were talking to someone younger, what would you say about that?
Well, my cycling has changed a lot since I've moved to Colorado Springs because I live 18 miles northeast of the Colorado Springs, so I have to drive to cycle. It's just busy roads. So Colorado Springs, though, has a great infrastructure for cycling. They have paved paths throughout the city. And another thing is I have actually switched to not exclusively, but I do have two electric bikes now, a Specialized Vado, and I just recently I had a bike in Seattle for the last 2 years waiting for a Lagos electric system to be put on it, which is on my Velo Orange, which is a system that is like Legos, where you can take the battery apart and travel on an airplane with it. So I'm hoping to take that to Italy next year.
Very cool.
Normally you can't fly with a battery, but these batteries are the size of laptop batteries, so you can carry them in your carry-on.
Nice. That's good to know. And so, what's the name of the company?
Well, I think it's Lagos, but
Legos. Okay.
it was Bike Zwift in Seattle that actually did the conversion.
Gotcha.
Um,
Last episode, I was talking to someone and we were talking about mindfulness. He was talking about how that comes about when he's on long solo tours. And you're kind of, I think, a unique person that asked this question of, do you see a bit of a spiritual connection to cycling?
yes, it's definitely a spiritual practice. I mean, I just get on a bike and I mean, it comes from being a kid too, feeling that freedom, but also of not being trapped in your mind, of sort of being able to experience what is right in front of you and to be present to be present to what is right in front of you. When I was on the Via Francigena in Italy in 2017, I was with two people for the first 2 weeks, and they planned every night where we were staying. And the second 2 weeks, I was by myself. It was sort of a metaphor for the bike industry because every day I would get lost. At first, had this anxiety about getting lost. And then it was just like all of a sudden one day I woke up and I said, "Oh, I'm lost again." And then I would just head in the direction I thought. And every day I found, where I was going. So yeah, it's this place of freedom of the mind and more an experience of the heart.
Yeah, as you're talking, what's coming to my mind is kind of a surrender to the journey. I don't
Yeah.
know if that makes sense.
Oh, have you ever seen my card?
I have not. Unpredict your journey. That's awesome. I love it.
So that came from, I was at a conference at Quality Bike Products, and a guy had a bumper sticker of this, not this logo, but I said, "How did you get that?" And he said, "Well, I was on a rafting trip." And he said, at the end of the day, he said, everybody who didn't choose to go through rapids didn't have any story to tell. And it's like, unpredicting, instead of always trying to follow this straight and narrow path, unpredicting your journey, listening to your intuition, listening to the spirit that's guiding you to experience more of life, to be more alive to life.
I love it. That's awesome. Speaking of being more alive to life, do you see a connection in your life or in other people between cycling and healthy aging? Is that something you feel like you've definitely benefited from?
I have definitely benefited from it, and I do see a benefit for a lot of people. I mean, just physically, when I go to the doctor and get some tests done, I'm just like, "Oh, well, this is from long-term cycling." This, some of these numbers are, some of the other ones that my back hurting or having to go to the chiropractor are definitely from not stretching enough. But a lot of internal benefits that I found out from just commuting all those years by bike.
Well, I am having to employ all of the habit change things I've been talking about on the podcast to myself when it comes to flexibility because I'm experiencing problems from it and I'm afraid they're going to keep me off the bike if I don't get serious about it. So that's definitely something I can relate to. Is there a way for people to follow you? Do you communicate out there over media
I
at
have
all?
I have an Instagram and and a Facebook account, but my Instagram is I post more things about bikes and I have more bike followers, and it's just Kathleen Emry.
I will make sure and put a link to that in the show notes for people because I think following that, I'm sure you'll announce if your memoir comes out. I'm sure you'll announce it there. And again, reach out to us if that happens.
And now you're motivating me to get busy on that. I did take a writing class and I did start writing. So, and yeah, I learned a lot from writing, and it was mostly about, about my employees, about the culture, and about the ministry that had really gone on at Free Range.
I think that's a wonderful story. I'd love to read that story. So,
I'll send it to you, Tom.
I love that. Thank you so much. Kathleen, it has been wonderful having you here and getting to know you. I wish that I'd gotten to know you when you were here and running the bike shop, but I'm glad I've had this opportunity. It's been delightful. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, and happy cycling to you.
Thank
Over
you.
60.
Yes, yes. All right. Take care now.
All right. Bye-bye.
If there's one thing that I hope just gets wedged in my brain from the interview is the concept of unpredict your journey. It's not the first time the concept has been embraced by a guest on the podcast. And it's always a bit of a confrontation of my nature to want to control everything. Not that I'll throw out all planning, but I'll work to find times that I leave all planning up to some force outside of myself. That sounds a little weirder out loud than it is in my head, but I will keep working on it. I was surprised and really curious to hear about the Zwift Industries campouts. I figured I would have heard about these trips already. That sounds like something that needs to have cycling over 60 representation. There is information on all kinds of rides on Zwift Industries' website. You do have to dig a bit to find it. You go to builtbyswift.com/pages/Zwift campout. I'll put a link in the show notes. I'll also put a link to the Lingo 10X batteries Kathleen mentioned. They look like a must for anybody who wants to fly with their e-bike. You can find them at ebikes.ca, which is the site for Grin Technologies. I hope your Thanksgiving was great if you are in the U.S., and I hope that if you're outside the U.S., that you are still finding a lot to be thankful for. Maybe like me, you are thankful to be healthy enough to go for a nice long ride. And remember, age is just a gear change.